The ATEM Mini Pro Extreme was just announced and it's got tons of new features. In this video, we're going to take a look at the pros and cons of this new switcher and ultimately answer the question, is it right for your church? So Blackmagic just rolled out yesterday with a massive announcement of a bunch of new gear, most notably the Blackmagic Mini Pro Extreme and Extreme ISO. These two switchers are upgraded and expanded versions of the ATEM Mini Pro that a lot of us have been using throughout the last 9 months. So first, let's talk about some basics. The ATEM Mini Pro Extreme is an all HDMI 8-input desktop switcher that's got Ethernet out, 2 USB-C outs, and 2 HDMI outs. It's essentially a souped up version of the regular ATEM Mini Pro that's got double the inputs, double the buttons, double the audio in, and double the outputs as well. So first, let's look at some pros of this new model. Number one is that it's all HDMI based. Most of us who weren't in any kind of broadcast or TV setting had never heard of an SDI cable until quarantine started about a year ago. So converting from HDMI to SDI and back is kind of a pain. And so having a switcher that's all HDMI based does make things a little bit simpler. Most of us are using HDMI monitors and computers and cameras, so keeping everything one format makes things a lot less confusing. Number two, this thing has 8 camera inputs. That's been a serious limitation of the other mini models, is that they only have 4 inputs. So you're really limited if you want to grow your cameras and also get graphics and other inputs fed into your live broadcast system. Now, you can put 8 sources of information coming in to the switcher, and you have 2 outputs going out as well over HDMI, which we'll talk about in a second. As a church, you'll probably never exceed 8 inputs into your video switcher, so this could last you a long time. All right, number 3 is that this has a built-in video scaler. What's interesting about Blackmagic Design's lineup when it comes to switchers is their lower-end mini models and their ME models that are a lot more expensive have built-in scalers for frame rate and resolution, while the middle-of-the-pack models like the TV Studio HD and the 4K Production and 4K Extreme do not have frame rate and resolution scalers. This has made syncing up computer monitors, especially coming from a Mac, and your camera inputs to be the exact same resolution and exact same hertz or frame rate to be pretty frustrating. The ATEM Mini Pro Extreme can receive all different types of sizes and formats other than 4K, so you can have your computer monitor running at 60 Hertz and your camera's running at 30, and you're gonna have no problem getting them plugged in and working right away. The fourth best thing about the ATEM Mini Pro Extreme is that just thinking about it makes you want to smash the like and subscribe buttons on this video. But in all seriousness, the fourth best thing I like about the ATEM Mini Pro Extreme is probably the most important thing they added to the Mini Pro lineup, which is 2 designated HDMI outputs. Having just one HDMI out on the other mini lineups has been really frustrating because it means you can either have a multi-view or you can have a program feed out over HDMI, but you can't have both. And it's pretty hard to cut without a multi-view because you can't even see what your cameras are seeing. And it's pretty hard to not have a program output if you're wanting to use anything other than the designated ATEM uploading software running to get your feed online. Now you can designate one of your HDMI outputs to go to your multi-view and still have one other HDMI output left to go to another computer, to go to a Resi capture device, or even to go to lobby TVs and other places in your building. Number 5. USB-C connectivity makes a lot of things easier. If for some reason you don't want to or can't use the HDMI connectivity, you can use the USB-C port to run this as a webcam inside some uploading software. This isn't my preferred method of sending video, but it does work if that's what you have available and you want to leave your HDMI ports for something else. You can also use one of the USB ports to record to an external hard drive, which allows you to record your program out externally instead of inside your streaming software, which tends to compress it and save it as a pretty low quality file. The nice thing about having 2 of these ports is that you can do 2 things. You can record on one port and live stream out the other port, or you can record on one port and plug a phone in to the other port as a backup because this device was designed to work through a phone's hotspot feature. So if you're in an unstable internet environment or you're in a mobile setting outdoors, you can use a phone's cellular data to upload everything, or you can use it as a backup in case your main internet connection fails during the service. All right, finally, number 6 is that you can control some Blackmagic cameras from this device. Being able to control what your camera sees and matching your color across angles is a huge benefit, usually reserved for very high-end setups. So that's a big plus if you're using certain Blackmagic cameras. Okay, now let's talk about things I don't love about the ATEM Mini Pro Extreme. And number 1 is that it's all HDMI. Yes, I did just say that that's a perk, and it is. It's more convenient. But if you think about it, there are some serious drawbacks to having only HDMI inputs into your switcher. The primary reason this is a negative is that HDMI is usually good up to about 30, maybe 40 feet. But going past that, even with special HDMI cables, tends to result in dropped frames, interference, and other issues that just simply can't be fixed. That's why SDI cables have been the broadcast TV standard for years, because they can go much longer distances, about the length of a football field, without needing any kind of amplification or repeaters. So if you're putting your cameras any more than 30 feet from your switcher, which if you're running more than 1 or 2 cameras is almost guaranteed, you're gonna have to convert from HDMI to SDI and then back to HDMI when you get back to the switcher, and each one of those adapters is another $50. The other reason I don't like that it's HDMI only is number 2 on my list of things I don't like about this switcher at all, which is that you cannot alpha key your graphics. If you're not familiar with what that means, alpha keying is the only way for you to overlay graphics from ProPresenter on top of your live stream video feed without keying out certain types of colors. Most churches today are doing what's called upstream keying. They're sending their lyrics, white text on a green or black background, and then they're using their switcher to key out or remove that background color so they get their text floating on top of their video. It works great. But if you ever want to use graphics like you're used to that are part screen, where you have a colored lower third to introduce your pastor, or you've got themed scripture graphics that go with your sermon series, or any kind of colored artwork that doesn't take up the whole screen, it immediately becomes a lot more complicated to send those out over ProPresenter, unless you're using what's called alpha keying. In order to set up alpha keying, you need 2 SDI signals coming from ProPresenter into your switcher. Many of you are familiar with the Decklink Duo card. The problem is that you can't send alpha channel information over HDMI. So even if you've set up key and fill signals and you say, oh, I'll just convert my SDI signals out into HDMI to go into this switcher, it won't work. It has to be SDI the entire way. So that's a big downside of this switcher, and probably the thing that first comes to mind when I look at limitations is that it does not have the ability to receive SDI signal. Even if you're not doing alpha keying, but you're using a Decklink Duo card or a similar card that's all SDI based, you're now going to have to buy an adapter for each end of those cables, outputs and inputs coming back into the computer, so that they're all compatible with SDI at one end or the other. And that brings me to problem number 3, which is that you cannot send full color graphic overlays to the rest of your building with this switcher. What do I mean by that? So many churches have gotten around this issue with alpha keying by just feeding their video back into ProPresenter and adding all their graphics there and then streaming out of ProPresenter. I think this is an awesome solution. However, if you want to send a copy of that feed out to the rest of your building, you've got to get your graphics into your switcher. But like we just talked about, you cannot send a full complement of graphics into this switcher over just one HDMI port. So that means that you're limited to the lowest common denominator of your graphics capabilities between what goes online and what goes into your building, whether in overflow rooms or other places you're sending your live stream video. This is not the end of the world, but for those of you who've been really excited that you can just keep your graphics inside ProPresenter, receive the video in, and just use the software to lay it on its way out, if you're planning on doing anything in an overflow room or a cry room that you want to see all the graphics and the video together, this is going to be a limitation that you might want to really think about. Finally, the 4th thing I don't like about this switcher is that it's not going to work for those of you with the M1 Mac Mini. While the M1 Mac Mini, even the base model, is incredibly powerful for the price, and I'm a big fan, it has been noted recently that there is a really hard limitation when it comes to live streaming for churches, which is that it'll only support 2 displays no matter what you do. So that means that you have your one HDMI display to the computer control just so you can run the computer, and you've got one other output over Thunderbolt or USB-C in order to drive maybe ProPresenter to the front of the house. But no matter how many dongles you connect from that point on, the computer just won't support a third or fourth or more display output, which means you cannot run the computer itself and ProPresenter to the front of the house and send anything to either a stage display and or to your switcher. Now the way around that has been to just get the Decklink Duo and put it inside a external chassis, which is no big deal. Except we just talked about how getting that external chassis means everything's going to be run over SDI. So you now have to get the external chassis and get all of these SDI to HDMI and HDMI to SDI adapters in order to make all of that work, which just sounds like a massive pain in the... If you get the ATEM TV Studio switcher, which is the exact same price, and run SDI for your program out and SDI in for everything coming from your computer out of the Decklink Duo, it just works. There's no problem, and you can do alpha keying because it's SDI the entire way. So to me, that is a significant benefit if you're in that kind of setup. With double the inputs and double the outputs, the ATEM Mini Pro Extreme really is a game changer for churches looking to do better quality live streaming than what they're currently using. Now, while there are some limitations, especially when it comes to graphics with this switcher, I do think it's worth a hard look if you're looking to keep a fairly simple setup. However, if there's any chance you're investing in a Decklink Duo or 8K Pro card in the next year or two, I strongly suggest getting the ATEM TV Studio HD instead because of its SDI connectivity for the exact same price. As always though, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. The right gear for your church is going to depend on what your church currently has and where your church wants to go. And if you're having a hard time figuring that out and you want some help, make sure you click the link in the description below to book a call with me or someone on my team. We'd love to spend some time talking through your church's live streaming goals and the best ways to get you there. So I hope this video has been helpful to you guys. Make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys next time.